Today we're taking a detailed, beginner-friendly look at Cursor AI. Cursor has actually changed a lot in the last couple of months and weeks. And now as a recently converted paid member, I want to give some practical tips and tricks on things that I've learned that would hopefully be helpful for those just starting out, especially if you're new to coding or coming back to coding after a hiatus for a while. And some of these things might be a little jarring. So without further ado, let's get into everything that is Cursor in 2025. So if you don't know what Cursor is and you haven't heard about it or anything like that, or you're just coming to it and you're curious about it, basically it is an AI code editor. It is a VS Code wrapper, so everything that you if you are coming from a VS Code background, everything that you can use inside of VS Code, it is over here is a VS Code fork. If you didn't already know that, it is free to get started. So if you want to try it out, you get a pro trial for 2 weeks, which is what I did in the beginning to understand what all this stuff was doing and how it was working. I was actually a little skeptical, honestly, in the beginning of the opening phases of Cursor. I was a skeptic. I tried it out for those 2 weeks and I found out that I was actually more productive as a developer. So again, as a literally recently converted paid member. So I am now paying for this. They did not sponsor this video, but it does allow you the same comforts as VS Code in terms of the extensions that are available. All that kind of stuff is still here. So if you are on a Windows machine and you want to open a project, that would happen to be inside of me. We're using my Windows side. It would be inside of like this file right here. This file or this project that I'm going to open here is not, because it's in a WSL Ubuntu flavor. So I'm using WSL. By the way, you can't necessarily see that, but it is over here in the right left hand corner down there. The gist of everything that you want to understand or know in terms of Cursor are these guys over here. Really more specific to this guy right here. If you are coming from, or if you're watching this from a earlier state of Cursor, you might know something, or you might remember something known as the composer. That isn't available anymore. As far as what I've seen, that is no longer available as a standalone thing anymore. At least from a recent update. I think it's version 48 plus or something like that, or however they do their versions over there. I don't think they're on. Anyway, in the recent version, it is now inside of this guy right here, and the way that I got there was by using Control I on a Windows machine or Command I on a Mac machine, or you can also use Control L or Command L to get there as well. So Control I and Control L open up the exact same thing now. There's 3 different modes that you have available inside of the chat window. So there's Agent, which does exactly what you would think it does. Ask, which then allows you to brainstorm or ask questions about your code. And then there's Manual. So the manual is a little bit, as it sounds, a little bit more granular in terms of the control that you have. If you have a specific thing that you want to do inside of the code base that you're working in, this is where you want to go. And if it's a one-off, you don't want anything else to change. You don't want anything around the code that you're specifying here to change at all. You just want to target this one line of code and one line of code only. So let's say, for example, you want to refactor a function name or something like that. This is where you're going to want to do that. Nowhere else can you do that? But specifically inside of manual, and again, I gotta bring this up, move that up there. There you go. So again, agent, ask, and manual. In general terms, if you're writing code, at least for me, from what I've seen and what I've learned myself specifically, and using this, I have stuck with Claude 3.5 like glue. I know Claude 4 Sonnet is out and you can use it. It has a bigger context window. But for me, I've seen more success with 3.5 as of this recording of this video. It may change. I may make another video about all this kind of stuff, maybe even next year, because I'm sure it's going to change something in terms of cursors is going to change. But as of right now, Claude 3.5 Sonnet is the way that I'm using the chat agent in terms of writing the code or generating the code that it helps me generate here. If I'm going to ask, so if I'm using the ask feature here, I'm going to change that from Claude to Gemini 2.5 Pro. The context window is exactly the same as Claude 4 Sonnet, and it does, like, Claude 4 Sonnet has a bigger request window as well. But for me, anytime that I've done any navigation or brainstorming or anything like that, it has mostly been better, and the results in terms of being able to like get full thoughts from the AI in terms of the prompt that I gave it, all of that usually comes out better for me with Gemini 2.5 Pro. And speaking of models, let's go ahead and go inside of the settings for a second. To get there, there's two different ways. And I'm going to have to bring my face out of the way for a second in order for you can see that. So there's two different ways to do that. So if you hit the gear icon up here at the top right, it'll open up cursor settings, which will allow you to go inside of your chat. And if you want to specifically change anything inside of there, you can. Like, so if you want to change your text size and make it a little bit easier to read, which I probably should do for tutorial videos, but that's not right now. Or if I want to change the models. Now, one thing to note here, if you are not a pro member or if you are not on a pro trial at the moment, the 2-week trial, you can't change any of these things over here. It's automatically going to stay and stick on auto and only use, I think it's Claude 3.5 anyway, or something of that nature. But if you are a pro member like I am currently, you can change your different models and you can see all the models that you have access to. If you want to use OpenAI, the only way that I've seen to be able to do that is by adding an API key, because they don't have it here inside of Cursor at the moment. But this max view, I haven't tested out as of yet, so I'm going to probably make a separate video on this later on, but I haven't tested this out just yet, so I can't speak to what it does yet. But I do plan on playing with this and seeing what it does in the near future. Since we're in here, and I don't know if I showed you the second way to get here. The second way to get to your settings would be inside of File and Preferences, and then Cursor Settings. If you're on a Windows machine, on a Mac machine, that would be similar, but still inside of Preferences, but you would hit the cursor icon or cursor text at the top. But you'll be looking for Cursor Settings in any case. And then from here, since we already have this open, let's go ahead and look at some of these tools that I have, at least for right now. I have Neon set as an MCP tool as at the moment, because I use Neon a lot. I like their branch feature, so you can test out a bunch of different things inside of your project without having to blow up or add things or bloat your production database. But this gives me a whole lot of things that I can do here. And if you so Neon is actually very nice in the fact that it actually gives you a button that you can click and then add all of this. If you want to do this manually though, so if you want to add a new MCP server, what you'll do is hit that button down there. That might have been a little fast, so I'll go back. New MCP server that will open up this file over here, and then each place that you have, or each value that you need to, or MCP server that you want to add here, inside of Cursor, this is where you're going to do that. I have a separate video that goes more in depth on how and how all that kind of works. So I'll leave that in the description. If you're so inclined that you want to take a look at that, you can. But that video goes more in depth on how that works. So this video specifically isn't about that, but I wanted to show this is how you get there. Okay. The next thing that I want to talk about will be rules. And if I had some rules that I want to follow inside of a specific project, this is where you would add them. Two resources that I found that are really good at doing that for you, or doing a really good job of that. That's not where I want it to be. This is where I want it to be. Would be playbooks and cursor.directory. Cursor.directory, and I'll bring my face back up here so you can see me. Cursor.directory is probably the better, or the more verbose version of the two when you're developing a larger project. So if you're doing a large scale project that is 100 different files and all that kind of stuff, like say a Next.js project, for example, that you know is going to be really, really hefty, you can add in some. Let me see if I can search for that's not what I want. This is what I want. So if I want Next.js, so you can read through these and actually say, yeah, this is probably what I want to stay in line with, or this one, or this one. So that's the beauty of this. Because you have so many things at your fingertips, you can go in a bunch of different directions. I'm going to go back to the rules, cursor rules, and let's say I wanted to grab a backend rule for Laravel or Fast API or something like that. So I'm actually actively working on a project with Fast API. So this is probably something that I'm going to actually end up using. So if I go inside of here and I check out these rules, I can see, hey, this is probably something that I actually would do. So I'll go ahead and copy this over, and then head into Cursor and then add the rule, and then just give it a name. So it'll say Fast API rules, and then we copy that inside of here. So I would just grab that from over here. So I'll just copy it for this and then paste that on inside of here. Probably because I have this zoomed in, I can't see where this actually would save. Well, I can just save it and then go back. And then now I have Fast API rules. Which, that said, the next thing that I've found the most joy in using would be the React docs. And the documentation for, move myself out of the way, the documentation aspect of Cursor would be the next thing that I've found the most joy in terms of using. Specifically because if I'm working on a project that, again, has a large context situation, I can go here, I can say, hey, here's what I need, this is what I want to do, and just add in different APIs or documentations inside of the doc. So then if I'm looking for I'm trying to build a certain feature, I can tell it to, hey, go and read these docs, then come back and say, here's how to build all of this stuff based on the documentation. But for this tutorial, I'm going to keep this very simple. Okay. So I'll go ahead and I'll just, well, I don't need those fast API rules at all, but you can, this is probably something to actually show. If I wanted to use documentation, I can say, hey, look up the React docs. So let's actually do that really quick. But before I do that, the other thing I want to point out here is since we added those cursor rules, inside of, if I was working inside of a fast API type of situation, what I would allow, what I would be able to do now is say, hey, use these rules based on what I put inside of my settings down here. And then before I actually go ahead and run this, I'm going to put in those rules, or the documentation, I should say, see if this actually does what I want. So let's say JavaScript MDN docs. We'll go ahead and confirm that. And this has already, again, been indexed as well. So this was indexed today at 7:55 a.m. So it looks like they do a lot of different indexing over time, but which is actually very cool. But let's go ahead and say, with context that we have now inside of the documentation of JavaScript MDN docs, now what I want to do is use that with this generated code here, and I'll go ahead and run that. I'll do it in agent mode, and then let that run and do what it's going to do. While that's doing that, it's basically going to check and see, hey, how are things created based on these documentations, or this documentation for JavaScript, and what should I be following as I'm creating this this project. If this were a larger project, obviously we would go step by step to do all this kind of stuff. But just for the sake of tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and explain everything, or accept everything, and then go to the next file. So the nice thing about this is you can review each file as you're going through this. So I can say, hey, I want to look at this before I say I want all of this to be inside of this, inside of this project. If I want to change anything, I can change it while I'm looking at the diff. But I'm going to go ahead and accept it, and then go to the next file that it's creating for me, which is the index.html. It's grabbed or created the app.js. I'll go ahead and accept that as well. And if we go inside the app.js, we can see that I need to accept this as well. We can see that I need to accept that. We can take a look, and we can compare and figure out, based on the documentation that we told it to use, did it actually follow that? Now, without going specifically into each different area and looking at all the things inside of MDN, because there's a lot in there, it feels like there's a good amount that it actually did do correctly. But before I say that, let's actually finish out this npm install, and then we'll go ahead and run this. So I'll say I want a new terminal. And to get here, by the way, you can either toggle this with this button or use Control J. So you can say Control J to close it and open it. I'll do an npm install. It looks like there was an error with npm. I'm going to try to do a bun install instead and see what happens with this. It should be very similar. So let me here uninstall once again. Uh, So, as you can see, there were some things that were not necessarily created the way that I would have wanted them to be created, but I had to go in and put some puzzle pieces in based on some things that I already knew weren't actually working. One of those things being the fact that Better SQLite 3 was just not working at all. So that there's the some of the issue where you might need to step in and actually do some things with cursor in order for it to do what you wanted to do. Thankfully, I had already created some of this already, so I just kind of moved some puzzle pieces around. Specifically, added a database folder and file, and then updated the app or the server JS, and then allowed or I asked for cursor to update the code where needed inside of the project, specifically so that when we go ahead and run this again, we get the actual recommendations. Now I don't, and this actually works. Cool. We can get new recommendations here based on adventurous, romantic. Let's say romantic. Cool. Okay. So everything pretty much works. Again, sorry for the long drawn out way to get there, but you can kind of see how the thought process would work if you were inside of a real project. This isn't foolproof at any point for any stretch of the imagination. It does have some kinks in it. You do have to step in where needed, but that's where experience in terms of understanding what you're looking at and what's going on helps, because understanding code and error messages specifically and why they're coming up, if you don't understand that, you may be going in circles and circles and circles trying to get the AI to spit out something that you actually want. But understanding that, hey, there was something that was not right with one of the modules that was trying to be installed, that kind of led me down the breadcrumbs to understand what I needed to do to actually get this to work. Now that that's settled, what I want to do from here is let me close this out. And let's say I wanted to make some changes here. So I forgot to go ahead and accept this. Let's say I wanted to make some specific changes here, or let's do it. Let's do it here. I want to add more destinations. So we can either add that inside the chat or do a quick edit. And I'm going to do a quick edit really quick. And we'll say, please add more tropical destinations. And we'll say we want to look inside of this big thing here. And then it goes ahead and adds some more in there. So now that we have all of this, if I want to go ahead and accept these extra places, I can go ahead and accept it. So I'll say yes. And then based on some of the things that are inside of here, so I forgot to accept this as well. So I'll go ahead and accept that too. But let's say I wanted to add another button. So another button, or yeah, let's say add another button, and we'll say we want to grab button with new recommendations instead of well, let's do this. Let's say button with ID of new recommendations, we probably need to change that. So instead of that, we'll say new mood, for lack of better examples. And let's say we wanted to grab a new mood, get new mood. So obviously this is a trivial example in terms of a larger, for lack of a larger code base in front of me, but this gives you an idea of the amount of time saving that you have with cursor and what you can do with it overall. If there's a whole bunch of changes that you need to make inside of your code base, you can go from one place to another, top to bottom, middle to top. All that kind of stuff is available to you. It literally jumps from one place to another if needed. This does help a lot with productivity around the entirety of your projects, using MCP servers and all that kind of stuff, with your rules, your documents available to you inside of one place without you having to go and look for them. You can place them all inside of one bucket or box and then get everything that you need to have done. So if you want more specific and in-depth things around cursor and some of the cursor specifics, like documentations and how to add specific documentations, some of the rules, how all of the different agents work and the different specifics around agents and all that kind of stuff, leave that down in the comments. And until next time, y'all be smooth. Blood out.